So PragerU just became a verified educational vendor in the state of Florida. And as someone with a background in education and more than a passing interest in PragerU, I decided to look into the educational materials that they have available, and what I found was genuinely really surprising. I actually started looking into all of this for a bigger video that I'm working on about educational censorship and how we teach history, so if you don't want to miss that one when it comes out, then be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so that you get notified when it releases. Anyway, PragerU is now a verified educational vendor in Florida, which means Florida public school teachers are free to use any of PragerU's content in their classes without fear of repercussions. Now, lots of outlets have covered this news, but most of them focus on the political bias that permeates PragerU's kids' content. But honestly, I think there's a lot more to say about PragerU's new educational stuff outside the politics. So literally the day that I finished editing this video, like literally the day that it went live for patrons and members, PragerU announced that their kids' content had also been verified as supplemental educational materials in Texas, and Jill Simonian made a whole video talking about the hate press that earlier announcement had gotten, of people talking about the politics of PragerU kids' videos, and she took real issue with that. So Jill, if you're watching, this one is for you. But also, if you want to see my full thoughts on that video that she made, then you can check out the recording I did with my friends over at the Human Restoration Project on their YouTube channel, and I will have that linked in the description. This aside is just to say that anytime I mention Florida in the video, remember that I'm also now talking about Texas. Anyway, back to the video. As their CEO herself recently said in a video reacting to the Young Turks discussion of PragerU Kids,
companies that are trying to really slander us are still holding on to a video that we took down because there's nothing else for you to attack us on. And so you have to attack us on something that is non-existent. It is non-existent, and it was never part of PragerU Kids.
So today, I don't want to talk about the politics of their videos. What I want to do today is look at their lesson plans, the newest set of educational tools in their marketing arsenal, and I want to look at them from a purely educational perspective. Because whether or not you agree with their politics, if PragerU is going to be used in schools, it's worth figuring out whether they're actually any good. When you go onto their website, they have a PragerU in Schools page that proudly proclaims their state approval in Florida, as well as what their goals are for these lesson plans. PragerU wants their lessons to be engaging, interactive, and fun, to be educationally sound, and to be turnkey so they're easy for teachers to implement. And if they're used widely enough, these lessons can even change the future of education in America. These are some pretty ambitious goals, but there's a multi-million-dollar media empire working to accomplish them, so if anyone can do it, it's PragerU. They have 6 lesson plans currently available, and each one is paired with an ongoing PragerU show, like Otto's Tales, Leo and Layla, and Michael Knowles' Book Club. And the first one that I looked at was the Otto Tales lesson on the Statue of Liberty for kindergarten through 2nd grade. Now, to help you understand what you're looking at here, let's talk about what lesson plans even are. I was a teacher for almost 5 years, and while I was getting my teaching license and teaching at the college level, I had to learn how to make lesson plans, so here is a super basic rundown. A lesson plan is your roadmap for the class you're teaching, and the 2 most important parts are your learning objectives, the concrete things that students should be able to do and know by the end of class, and the lesson that will help students to reach those objectives and help the teacher to assess whether those objectives have actually been met. I was also taught that a good lesson plan should contain everything that you need to know to teach the lesson, and it shouldn't leave anything too ambiguous, so anyone could teach it even if they don't know anything about the class. And for PragerU, they want their lessons to be turnkey, so this ease of use thing is definitely an important goal here. So, lesson plans need objectives, a plan for how to reach those objectives, and a method for how to evaluate whether the objectives have actually been reached, and the whole thing needs to be written in a way that is clear and easy to implement. With that in mind, let's take a look at this Statue of Liberty lesson. Alright, so this lesson is for grades K through 2, so around 5 to 7 years old, and the big overarching question is, why is liberty important in America? Students should learn about the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island, understanding the importance of liberty in America. They'll join Otto the Bulldog and Smidge the Kitten as they travel to New York City and meet new friends who show them the history of this great monument. Awesome. Then we have our learning objectives, and remember, our learning objectives need to be actions that students can take that are able to be assessed by the teacher. So we're looking for strong verbs here. We have understand the concept of liberty, recognize the Statue of Liberty, identify the reasons people immigrate to America, explain what the parts of the statue represent, and appreciate America's dedication to freedom. All right, these aren't great, but we'll come back to that. Let's just see what the lesson itself has to offer. We start by asking students what they know about the Statue of Liberty. This is great. By doing this, the teacher is establishing what the students already know so that they can then tailor the rest of the lesson to them. And it's also getting kids' brains warmed up to start thinking about the subject of the lesson. Cool. The actual lesson itself is watching a video. I don't think that watching a video counts as a lesson, especially when it's just Jill Simonian reading a book to us, but then we have discussion, discuss what students liked about the story and have them share what they would add to the Statue of Liberty if they could. This is not really what I would classify as discussion. Like, usually when you're having students discuss what they just read or watched, you ask two types of questions. Questions to determine content knowledge, so like, do they actually understand what they just read? And questions that further understanding. So asking them to think about the text in new contexts or things that present them with ways that they can use the content knowledge that they just gained. And this discussion has neither of those. These questions are entirely unrelated to the actual content of the text. Like, it would be different if you asked students what they liked about the story and then asked them why they liked it, or if you had students investigate their relationship with the story. But no, what we get is entirely surface level. And this lesson being for younger students is no excuse here. Young kids can think deeply, believe it or not. Finally, we have a wrap-up, or as they put it, a warp-up. Seriously. PragerU is funded by millionaires, and they couldn't be bothered to proofread this? I expect more from PragerU. Yeah, typos happen to the best of us, but those little issues add up, as we'll see later. Anyway, the warp up is equally bad. Teachers are simply handing out the books that the video is based on and asking students to pick their favorite page. And again, this doesn't really have anything to do with the lesson, and it's unclear whether students are supposed to read the book first or if they're just skimming to find a good picture that they like. At least we then actually ask students about why they chose that page, so that's something. And then we ask questions to check for understanding, and I don't know why we're doing that here and not earlier in the lesson. And also, some of these questions are just terrible. Like, everybody knows what color the Statue of Liberty is. What does that have to do with liberty or immigration? Because, oh yeah, don't forget, the lesson is supposed to get students to reach the learning objectives in an easily measurable way. So how does this lesson, which I'll remind you is just watch a video and then ask them what decorations they would add to the Statue of Liberty, in what way does that lead students to understanding the concept of liberty, or identifying why people immigrate to America, or appreciating America's dedication to freedom? And while we're here, let's talk about these learning objectives because, oh boy. So, most of the time, learning objectives are based on what's called Bloom's taxonomy, which essentially breaks down learning into a hierarchy of action verbs. At the bottom, we have knowledge and understanding verbs, and then application and analysis verbs, and then at the top are the most complex evaluation and creation verbs. So we use these words when writing our objectives because they give us concrete actions that are easy to assess. And they're in a hierarchy because you need to have the lower level skills in order to be able to perform the higher level ones. Like, you have to be able to identify what a metaphor is before you can analyze how an author uses metaphors in a piece of writing, for instance. Now, some people have criticized Bloom's taxonomy, and I'm personally not the biggest fan, but in any case, it is still best practice for writing lesson plans. So, first thing, all of these are low-level skills. Just because a lesson is for young kids doesn't mean those young kids can't handle higher-level thinking. If all you focus on is low-level skills, your lessons are going to be boring. And second of all, appreciate is not a Bloom word. You will not find a Bloom's taxonomy list of verbs that contains appreciate, because appreciate is not a demonstrable, accessible action. In fact, I actually looked it up to make sure that I was right on this, and if you look up Bloom's taxonomy words and appreciate, you only get resources telling you to avoid using it because it's not measurable. Seriously, if anyone can explain to me how to measure appreciation in a way that doesn't feel like indoctrination, please let me know. But even if all the objectives were good, the activities still wouldn't actually help students to reach those objectives or give the teacher a way to assess them. The discussion is about what students liked about the story and how they would decorate the Statue of Liberty. Those do not show understanding of the concept of liberty or give students a way to identify the reasons why people immigrate to America. And this is especially bad for the teacher giving the lesson because there is no indication of why the lesson includes these things. None of the activities seem to relate to the learning objectives, so what is the point of doing the activities? The lesson is supposed to always tie back to its objectives and standards, and this one simply does not. It is poorly constructed, ambiguously organized, and boils down to show a video and ask some tangentially related questions. Remember, PragerU's goals for their lessons is that they're fun and engaging, educationally sound, and easy to implement. This lesson is none of those things. It has 6-year-olds watching a 15-minute long video and then talking about how they'd redecorate a statue, not actually redecorating it, which would be easy enough to do with some coloring sheets and craft supplies, but I digress. The lesson doesn't actually connect its activities to its learning objectives, so even if it were educationally sound, you'd have no way to tell. And it's written in an unclear way and doesn't give the teacher any justification for its own existence. This lesson doesn't just fail by the standards of normal lesson plans, it fails by PragerU's own standards. It's bad. And it's only the first of 6. But before we go any further, I want to tell you a little bit about today's sponsor, Notion. So Notion is a workspace that combines features of a word processor, database, and project management tool. And you can access it through your browser using their software on Mac and Windows, or through their app on iOS and Android. Notion is basically an all-in-one tool for writing an organization, and I absolutely love it. I've actually been using Notion to write my scripts for a little while now, so when they reached out to me about doing a sponsorship, I immediately said yes. In fact, I'm actually writing this that I'm currently now reading in Notion. One of my favorite things about Notion is how it helps me with organization. When I'm working on videos, especially big ones that have a lot of research and video references and just a ton of moving parts, it can be a pain to try to juggle all of those different sources across a dozen different platforms. But with Notion, I can keep everything in the same space. I can link to different parts in the document, I can embed tables and Google Docs and even GIFs. It is so convenient to be able to just drag and drop tables and images. It really makes it so much easier to stay organized. And it means that I can move stuff around and customize my workspace to be however my messy brain needs it to be. You can even add covers and color code the paragraphs, which, let me just say, my chaos brain loves color coding. Like when I was in grad school, I color coded everything, like my notes and paper revisions, even like student papers that I was grading, color coding. So I love this so much. This is the sort of tool that I wish I had in college because it would have been a lifesaver. As a student, it can be really hard to plan papers and projects and stay organized, especially when you're collaborating with other people. But with Notion, you can keep your notes and your projects and job applications and even to-do lists and meeting notices all in the same space. But if the idea of like total customization power sounds too daunting for you, don't worry. Notion has a ton of templates over on their template gallery, so if you just want a pre-made dashboard or wiki or lesson plan, for instance, you can go to the template gallery and find pretty much anything that you need. But one of the best things about Notion is that it is completely free for students and educators. If you sign up using your school email, you get all of the Plus features for free. But even if you're out of school like I am, Notion has a free version, which is actually the one that I use, that I think is great for individual use. But whatever account type you choose to go with, Notion is just a great tool for staying organized, and like I said earlier, it's something that I actually use in real life, like for this job, so I am just so excited to be able to share it with all of you. If you like the sound of Notion, then you can go ahead and sign up using the link in the description, and thanks again to Notion for sponsoring. Okay, let's get back to the terrible lesson plans. What do I do? I can't just move you. My spot has been taken, so we'll do what we can. Oh, there he goes. You're so cute. Look at his belly. Unsurprisingly, the rest of the lesson plans are just as bad, and in some cases, definitely worse. But I don't have it in me to do an in-depth discussion of every single one of these, so let's just go through the highlights. The Leo and Layla lesson on John Marshall was actually organized okay, but I didn't understand why they had to give the teacher an exact script of what to say during the lesson. It's also confusingly written, where they never say whether the students are supposed to actually, like, read the text at the beginning of the worksheet or not. It's just really unclear. C+. The Guess or Mess lesson on John Adams is certainly ambitious. It's a part of a larger project where students are tasked with doing research papers and presentations on presidents, but it's written really confusingly and also has students do research papers without actually giving any support or scaffolding for how to do research projects, which is literally what lesson plans are for. Also, they say that John Adams' son was the 4th president of the United States. He was not. He was the 6th president of the United States. Amazing stuff. C-. I actually did a stream with the Human Restoration Project folks where we looked at this lesson in depth, so if you want a more detailed look at this one in particular, I have that stream linked below. The Street Smarts lesson about citizenship made my brain melt. So this lesson has appreciate as a learning objective, and we all know how I feel about that, but let me run through exactly what is involved in this lesson. First, ask students about citizenship. This is fine. Then we hand out a worksheet and have students work on it as a class. Don't love it, but whatever. Then, the actual lesson. Step 1, state, let's play a fun game and see if we got it right. Step 2, watch the video. So first, watching a video is not playing a game. And second, the Street Smarts video that they're watching has the host ask kids on the street various history questions, and the history questions in this video are the same questions as the ones on the worksheet. This would be bad enough on its own, but then we get down to the wrap-up and it says to allow students 10 minutes to complete the worksheet. You know, the same worksheet that they got at the beginning of class. In other words, this lesson has teachers hand out a worksheet, give students time to answer the questions as a class, then watch a video in which the people in said video ask and provide the answers for the same set of questions as those on the worksheet. Then, students get an additional 10 minutes to complete the worksheet whose questions, I will remind you, have already been asked twice and answered. This lesson is just 45 minutes of doing the same worksheet, answering the same 8 questions 3 separate times. And literally any actual discussion of the questions is saved for the last few minutes of class. Also, one of the learning objectives is recognize the origins of modern citizenship from ancient Greek and Roman empires. But literally, all they do to accomplish this is say, our system came from Rome and Greece, and that's it. No discussion of what that even means. Because heaven forbid we devote any more time to actually discussing these topics, because then we might not have time to answer the same set of questions 3 separate times. This lesson is for 6th graders. It gets an F. The book club lesson is on the Federalist Papers, and it also has appreciate as one of its learning objectives. The warm-up has the teacher ask the students what the purpose of the federal government is, and why we have a government, and what it means for a government to be too powerful, and this is supposed to take 5 minutes to talk about all of that. And you'd better hope that that discussion doesn't go too long, because the main lesson includes watching the book club video on the Federalist Papers, which is 27 minutes long. Literally half of your class time is devoted to watching 2 guys talk about a thing. Not the class talking about it. The class watching 2 other people talk about it. This is actually a common trend across all the lessons, talking about doing a thing or watching other people do a thing instead of just doing the thing in the class. Like, the Statue of Liberty lesson has students talk about decorating the Statue of Liberty when they could have just actually decorated the Statue of Liberty with some crayons and coloring pages. Same thing with the citizenship and John Adams lessons. They watch a video of people playing a game, because both of the shows are game shows, when you could just do the game in the class. Are you done sneezing? Like, PragerU had already designed the games for their shows. They could have just converted the games into lesson plans. But the reality is, most of the lessons just boil down to watch a video and do a worksheet. Like, the cash course lesson on budgeting isn't even worth talking about because it's a nothing lesson for that reason. But I think that this is all indicative of just how vapid PragerU's view of schooling is. Their lessons don't include real activities or real discussions because they simply cannot imagine a lesson that isn't someone standing at the front of a classroom talking at a bunch of children who are silently sitting at their desks with a worksheet in front of them. They say that they want to change the future of education in America, but what they're providing with these lesson plans isn't some kind of educational revolution. It's boring. Like I said about the first lesson we looked at, these lessons aren't just bad by normal standards, they're bad by PragerU's own standards. They aren't fun and engaging because most of them boil down to watching other people do activities and then filling out worksheets. They aren't educationally sound because the learning objectives are rarely, if ever, met through the lesson. And they aren't good for teachers. These lessons are constantly leaving teachers hanging. Like, the Federalist Papers lesson has students do a debate after watching the video, but there's no guidance on what a debate should even look like what the rules should be, if it should be teams or individual, or any of the details that would be useful to have in a lesson plan about a debate. And the same goes for the John Adams lesson, which was honestly really confusing and didn't give any information on how to teach elementary school kids how to do research. If your lesson plans aren't explaining how to do these things, what is the point of them? Teachers aren't given any support or justification for the activities, and what they are given is pointless. Like, some of the lessons give teachers a script, like in the Federalist Papers one, which had the space to tell teachers exactly what to say, but not enough space to specify which portion of Federalist number 51 to read. The priorities of these lessons, with what they choose to include and what they don't, is absurd. And there's also a bunch of little things that I wouldn't call out if it were an individual teacher's lesson plans, but which are absolutely unacceptable when it's a well-funded organization like PragerU. Like, sometimes wrap-up is spelled with a hyphen in the middle, and sometimes it's not. And of course, there's the warp-up disgrace from the Statue of Liberty lesson, too. Sometimes the length of the lessons is written with the full word minutes, while other times it's shortened to mins. Sometimes the educational standards are written with every word starting with a capital letter, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they describe the sections with pedagogical language, like connect to prior knowledge and gradual release of responsibility, which is great, but they only do that on one lesson. And let's not forget that a lesson about John Adams has a factual error about John Adams' family. Sure, some of these things are petty, but if PragerU is asking to be taken seriously as official state-approved providers of educational material, they need to start making stuff that is of a quality worth taking seriously. Honestly, I was considering doing like a whole bit where I actually fixed all the lesson plans and rewrote them to be actually good. Like, for the first one, I like the idea of having students make their own version of the Statue of Liberty. Like, okay, so what did we learn about the Statue of Liberty? Like, what is represented by her crown and her tablets and the torch, etc. And then having students make their own versions with their own features, with their own deeper symbolic meanings, and then we could all share our personal statues that we made and talk about them. Like, that would be a fun lesson that actually has students demonstrate their learning. But I didn't want to do a bunch of unpaid work for PragerU in fixing all of these sloppy lesson plans, but I also just couldn't help myself, so I did go through and fix some of them. And if you want to see my redone lesson plans, they're up on my Patreon. All patrons have access to them, so PragerU folks, if you're watching, join my Patreon. All of this is to say, these lesson plans, these tools that are funded by a multi-million-dollar media empire and which Florida has decided are valid educational resources, are very bad. And in my professional opinion, not fit for classroom use. To quote a history teacher friend of mine, using these lessons unmodified from PragerU amounts to educational malpractice. And I'm sure most of my regular viewers aren't exactly surprised by this, but if anyone is watching this who is a fan of PragerU, first of all, thank you for making it this far in the video, like, genuinely thank you. I just wanted this video to show that even if you agree with PragerU's politics, you should still be able to acknowledge that these lesson plans are not well designed. Even if you agree with all of PragerU's educational goals, you should be able to see that these lessons don't actually help students or teachers reach those goals. Honestly, these lessons are so lazily made. They are so shallow and poorly put together. I was genuinely surprised at how bad they were. I expected more from PragerU. But if they're willing to actually give these terrible low-effort lesson plans to teachers to use, it's worth questioning how much respect they actually have for educators. And it's not even just that the lessons themselves are poorly crafted, it's that the deeper problems we've discussed betray PragerU's uninspired view of education and their demeaning view of children. These lessons are so boring and pedagogically unsound, very few things are actually going to be learned during these lessons, and no child is going to find them intellectually stimulating. If this is what PragerU considers quality, it's worth questioning how much they actually know or care about education. The only thing I can draw from all of this is that PragerU doesn't actually care about making engaging lessons that will teach critical thinking. They just want teachers to show their videos and hand out their worksheets and have students passively absorb and regurgitate information without actually doing any learning. They don't care about education. They care about putting their brand in front of your children. If you want your students to learn history in an engaging and critical way, you need to use lessons that teach them to ask questions, to be curious, to interrogate narratives, to actually engage with stuff and do stuff, not just watch videos and do worksheets. But if what you want is for kids to be obedient and uncurious and bored, then yeah, use PragerU. I know which one I'd want. Thanks for sticking around till the end of the video. This was a lot of fun to make, but it is part of a bigger and more serious video coming out hopefully in late September, so if you want to make sure not to miss that one, then subscribe to the channel and ring the little bell that notifies you when my videos release. Also, if you're into these PragerU videos, I want to recommend the channel Test Dummy, who makes some great videos, some of which are about PragerU. He actually did a follow-up video to my PragerU pipeline video from last year, and I've actually gotten to know Ben a little bit over the past several weeks, and he's just a really awesome creator, and I definitely recommend checking out his work, linked in the description. I want to give a huge thanks to all of the people whose names are scrolling by over here, I think. I assume that's where I'll put it. That would make sense. And an especially enthusiastic thanks to A Tasty Snack, Adam, Hugh Sophia, Jaded Flames, Justin Lowry, and Paige Hansen. Thank you all so very much. If you would like to join these lovely people in the credits, get early access to ad-free versions of my videos, or just help to support the channel, then you can join my Patreon linked in the description, or become a channel member by hitting the little join button that is down there over here, I bet. Finally, for today's patron poem of the video, we have Worship for Emily Armstrong. Wake up, young man, and go. Listen to the myth-blind philosopher carve history into fresh-plucked bones. Kneel at the altar of wealthy failures and pray for silver and wives. Drink the blood of the venom-spent cobra, muscle-bound and martyred. Feel the cry of the Leviathan quake under steel-toed boots, and beg the God you built for a reminder you're alive. Because forgiveness is too much to ask. Anyway, I have a big video to go make, and also some Baldur's Gate 3 to play. So I will catch you all next time. Until then, stay safe, stay warm, and I will see y'all again soon, I hope. Bye, folks. I hope the hair was okay. Please be nice about my hair in the comments. I'm still figuring out how to do it. It's been a while since I've had it this short, so it's like, what do I do? I'm figuring it out. I don't know how anything works. That's my secret, is I'm winging all of it. You're the good boy. You are. You're a good boy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're gonna get cat hair all over my clothes though. PragerU is now a verified educational vendor in Florida, which means that Florida public... Desmond just made a mistake